Veritas Files here. I thought I'd do a video on what happens after collapse. I've seen some videos recently that give a certain vision of what they think will happen after collapse. But I can't say that I agree with them, and they know this. But I find their conception of the future after collapse and what's likely to occur in the United States, from my perspective, wildly inaccurate. And I just thought I'd give my point of view on this particular topic, and we'll see what you guys think. Feel free to comment, disagree, agree, whatever. But there are those who seem to think that the future will be what we make of it. That if we simply do the right things, we'll be able to come together and rebuild this nation on a positive foundation, an appropriate foundation. I think that is very overly optimistic, to say the least. I really, and I don't mean any offense by this, I don't mean to sound condescending or anything else, but I think it borders on the naive to think that we can accomplish such a thing. Human beings, and Americans in particular, have become so degraded in their natures and their knowledge of their heritage, of right and wrong, of some of the basic things that we have taken for granted for so many years, that I just think the idea of our being able to accomplish such a great feat, anything like the American experiment again, is pretty much laughable. And you can say, oh, well, you don't have confidence in the American people, and you're exactly right, I do not. And in my view, if you were smart and you were thinking properly, you wouldn't either. That's not me trying to insult the American people, that's just me attempting to deal with reality the way that reality is. I love my country, I love the people in my country, but my country has been poisoned by popular culture, by modern society that has rejected bedrock foundational truths that are accurate reflections of reality, i.e., the existence of a God, the fact that our rights derive from an endowment from that creator. These kinds of things are so foundational to our ability to procure the freedom that is ours, that I don't see a way for us to come back. I don't see a way for that to happen. And in fact, I see quite the opposite. I see our current circumstance as being one which drives government to become ever more powerful, ever more controlling, tyrannical. And I think, the losses we've experienced thus far, prior to a full and absolute collapse, are evidence of what I'm talking about. We have a nationalized healthcare plan. It comes into effect a couple of years or a year or so after the next president is elected, conveniently. If you've done any reading on it at all, you've probably realized that the goal of the plan itself is to bankrupt insurance companies. You force insurance companies to do what insurance companies, or actually to not do what insurance companies have to do, which is to assess and take into account risk. So you force them to not take into account things like pre-existing conditions, which is a massive risk. And then you tell them they have to offer health insurance policies to people at a reasonable rate for the foreseeable future. But again, don't take into account risk. This is a recipe for bankruptcy. There is no long term to that. This is a recipe for short-term bankruptcy. They will not last long. If private insurance companies lasted 20 years in that kind of scenario, I would be surprised. And the only way it will last is if the government allows insurance policy rates to rise every year, or pretty much every year. It's the only way it's going to happen. And in this way, the government addicts the entire populace to its provision of health care. So we'll soon find ourselves, if we want health care, being forced to go to the government. And if we don't want to go to the government, we'll need to have access to actual wealth. And given that we are probably going to move to a digital currency system, which will not allow the private acquisition of wealth, in the sense that it's wealth that the government doesn't have control of, can't track, doesn't know about, and it's going to be paperless, there's probably not going to be very many means for our to pay for things like healthcare. And my simple point is, with the healthcare talk here, is the government is finding ways, whether you're talking about healthcare or you're talking about welfare or you're talking about Social Security, of addicting massive segments of the populace to itself. They seem bent on doing virtually nothing about illegal immigration for the same reason. They know those people will be poor. They know those people do not hold traditional American values, and I don't mean to offend those people, but they're not Americans. They haven't grown up with an American heritage. They don't really understand what it means to be an American. They're not going to have American attitudes. This is not racially motivated, but they're going to have a Mexican heritage. They're going to have a Mexican understanding of how things work. And it's just not going to be conducive to their standing up against a government that they will perceive as trying to meet their needs and help them in difficult times. So I see the future as being not hopeless, but it's going to be an age of challenge and survival. When I talk about survival on this channel, I don't just mean surviving economic collapse. I mean surviving into the future. For as long as you're alive, this is going to be about survival. You're going to have to be prepared to be paid under the table, to pay under the table. You're going to have to be prepared to disobey government. You're going to have to be prepared to maybe, eventually, be on the run, be mobile, to avoid the heavy hand of government. I think even your beliefs are going to be a source of friction between you and the government. I know they will be with me. I have certain beliefs, probably the books that happen to be appearing in this video are evidence of that the government simply won't like. Eventually my beliefs, though they're not based in hate, will probably be viewed as hate speech. I will probably be seen as an impediment to progress because I believe in traditional American values, because I hold fast to the Judeo-Christian moral ethic that has so strengthened and founded our nation. And I'm going to have to be prepared to do things that I've never had to do before. And I am curious as to how many of you think this way. How many of you, when you're being honest with yourself about the American people and about your country, think that the future is ours to shape in the way that we will? That if we just do the right things, gosh, there's enough of us to come together and make something great out of this? Or how many of you think that there really probably isn't enough of us to do a whole lot, except in small groups, small areas around the nation, and that we are going to become the targets of government in the future. I firmly believe that that's going to be the case. The American government is not simply going to disappear. It's not simply going to dissolve because of a massive economic collapse. They will likely always hold a monopoly on the coercive use of force. And we can talk about that in the future too. I realize the American people are heavily armed, relative to the rest of the world. But, 10 people with a deer rifle, a handgun, a shotgun, and the occasional AR-15 are not going to be able to match even a straight-legged military force with automatic weapons. It's just not going to happen. Logistically speaking, there's no way that we could come up with the ammunition supply that would be necessary to deal with that kind of an issue. And anyway, I'll probably do another video on this topic later, but this is just sort of introductory. I really would like to read your comments and opinions, so please let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.